Hey guys, it's Hans Hobbies, and today I have a overview video about my Tamiya Sand Scorcher build. Um, it's basically done. Eventually I may do some other upgrades or changes later on, but for the most part, this is how I'm gonna be running it. And the body's painted, the decals are applied, and it's a little bit different from box art because I personally don't really like the box art look of the Sand Scorcher. I know that's blasphemy for me to say, but I'm personally not a fan of the box art look. Um, so I kind of changed it up a little bit. You can see it's still technically like that blue and white color scheme, but it's a little bit different. And also the blue is much more like a sky blue or like a mint color, just because I like that color a little bit better. So looking around the body, you can see like the wheels aren't painted because it happens to go with the color scheme. I could have painted them white as well, but I didn't want to risk them chipping or anything later, so I just left them white. It doesn't really matter anyway. Um, you can see the decals here. My little driver figure. I didn't put the stock head on it, and I'll talk about the driver more a little bit later. It's kind of that motocross helmet from one of the Axial kits. The mirrors on the side, on the rear, that Baja Bug, that nice little exhaust detail. The tail lights are all colored in. Some more details on there. On the other side, I use the alternate numbers for the side instead of the actual Sand Scorcher one. And some other miscellaneous decals I had laying around. I do that on the hood, colored in the little lights on the front as well, and then put the light bright stickers for the headlights. So overall, I really like how this thing turned out. I had to paint the silver for the exhaust tip. This is, I think, white out of the box, and you have to paint it. So I painted that black and then painted it silver. I think it looks quite nice. And overall, I'm really happy with how this thing turned out. I have a aftermarket bumper on here because the stock bumper, while probably functional, is very, very ugly. And again, I didn't go with the typical box art style bumper that a lot of people choose to get. I kind of chose this bull bar style just because I personally like the look of this a little bit better. Taking the body off, and if you've never seen a Sand Scorcher before, you have a single body clip on the front, which is already off, and then there's a little metal clip back here. That's the reason why the Sand Scorcher has no rear window, is because you have to stick your finger in here to, one, access the power switch, and two, to access the clip. And just pull that up, and then you pull that up here, and you can see a little servo wire here. I'll get to that in a second, but this is how the chassis looks. For those of you that don't know, it has like a clear plastic, kind of splash-proof and dust-proof cover, which is very nice. Metal suspension in the front, and then metal suspension in the rear. The rear is independent swing arm, so no, this is just camber gain central here. Transmission case is also metal. Like I mentioned, the exhaust pipes and this rear cage detail are plastic, but this bar right here is metal because that is what the metal clip in the back mounts to. Front body mount is also metal and also part of the steering servo. Is the steering system. The servo is here and is taped on. Everything on here is taped on inside this little case here. And for the battery, you have to fit like a mini size battery or like a small LiPo battery because it won't fit the typical 6-cell nickel battery. Just won't fit in there. So you have to kind of get creative with your battery solution. TBLEO2S speed control included with this 2010 re-release version. That's a really nice speed control. I'm running it on my Spectrum DX4S radio. Nice little boot for the power switch as well. It's very satisfying to use. I really like that. And front like trailing arm suspension like a real Beetle. That's probably one of the biggest selling points of the Sand Scorcher, is the really accurate suspension to the real thing. Kind of like a, I'm not sure what this material is. Kind of just like a FRP or maybe like fiberglass plate or something like that. I'm not sure what it is. But it seems like it's plenty durable. It has a little aluminum brace on the bottom there. The rear drive shafts are metal, and as you can see, there's no diff in this guy. It's just a locked differential. You access all the internals and the battery by taking out these little cam locks, which is pretty cool. I've never seen that in any other vehicle before, so that's a pretty satisfying and really cool little system to use. So yeah, overall pretty cool. But you see, I have a huge hole in the side of mine, and the reason for that is because my driver here is set up with a servo at the bottom, and I needed to make room for the servo. Before I put the hole in the dust cover actually worked really well. I drove this thing in the rain, and it kept like literally like 99% of the water out of all my electronics and my battery. Like my battery and my electronics were bone dry. There's a little bit of like humidity that forms in there, but it does a really good job with water. It's not submergible, of course, but it does a pretty decent job of being splash proof, and that gives me high hopes for it being sand and dust proof as well. So pretty nice cage as long as you don't punch a hole in it like I did. But I think it's worth it for me, just because it adds a little bit of a cool factor. You can't really add lights to this out of the box because they're not actual buckets. The fronts are technically buckets, but you have to modify them, and the rears, or you have to modify it completely to add lights. So instead of having lights, I decided I wanted a driver that's kind of more interactive. So you can see here when I turn, the servo is not plugged in properly. Of course, as soon as I turn the camera on, this thing decides not to work, making me look like an idiot, but so that's cool. There we go. It kind of ruined the big reveal, but you can see the driver head moves with the steering. As you can see, the steering servo is not the most reliable thing. I'm not sure why. It's not just the servo. A lot of the micro servos I've tried with my setup seems to like kind of cut out intermittently. So I'm not sure what the issue is. It's a cool feature though when it does work, and when it's like not working properly, I can just unplug it, and that's fine. It doesn't add too much interference to anything, so I'm pretty happy with that. But before I go and drive it, some common issues with the Sand Scorcher is a lot of these parts are just threaded into metal, and it's just all cast parts. So you're going to have to use a lot of Loctite on it, especially the front suspension and the rear drive shafts. They like to pop off, so make sure everything's tight before you drive it so you don't lose parts, and make sure everything's thread locked. That's very important. This little antenna in the back here, it's not an antenna, it's more like a metal little aerial thing. The moment you flip it over, it's going to get all bent up. Mine's already kind of bent, so that's if you're really concerned about that, that might get annoying for you. For me, it's not that big of a deal. This rear exhaust pipe area also looks very cool, but also unfortunately very fragile. This bottom piece is attached pretty decently, but this tall exhaust piece is only held on with the one peg down here, and I've already broken mine. Without even crashing it, I was just literally drying it off with a towel, and I tapped it a little too hard, and it just fell right off. So that had to be super glued on. It'd be really cool if someone made like a more durable version of this mold, or made it in metal or something. That'd be very expensive, but yeah, it's a very cool detail, but unfortunately very fragile, so you're gonna have to keep in mind of that. Also, the mirrors are very fragile, so if you roll it over on the mirrors, they're 100% going to rip off immediately. So that's also something that you may want to, if you want mirrors on it, you may want to see if someone makes them out of like rubber or something. And the other thing is, previously when I drove this with the Monster Beetle body, I had a problem with the body keep popping off in the rear. It doesn't seem like it's having that issue as bad with the actual Sand Scorcher body, The main bodies are basically identical, so I'm not sure why there's a difference, but that might be something you want to look out for. The other thing is, since it doesn't have a rear diff, it's gonna have a very wide turning radius on it. So on any like high grip surfaces, you want to be careful not to roll it over. As well as I lost the front springs here. The shocks are not spring loaded. And in the front, it uses like a coil spring in the front to kind of actuate the spring action. And my suspension fell off and I lost that. So if you lose it, you have to buy that special spring again, or do what I did and just buy this internal spring shock with oil in it. I'm not quite sure what shock that is. I think it's like a 60mm shock for like a crawler or something. I just bought it on eBay, and that seems to work pretty well. And I like it a lot better than the coil spring, not the coil spring, the little spring that's in the actual suspension arm. I don't know. It seems you're not gonna lose it as bad, even if your suspension arm happens to fall off. So that's just my little 2 cents there. But speaking of all that, let's go outside and see how it actually drives. It is only 2-wheel drive, but the lock diffs helps it get through pretty tall grass, actually. And it jumps fairly nicely on my little driveway here. So that's a lot of fun to do. I'm running a 1600 milliamp mini-sized nickel metal hydride battery pack. And even with that battery pack, it runs very well. The only thing you're going to want to keep in mind with using a nickel metal pack is because there's not a lot of ventilation in that little dust cover. The battery does end up getting very hot after use, so you want to make sure you let that battery cool down before using it again. But even just driving it on my driveway is very enjoyable to drive, and it's definitely not like a basher. You're not going to drive it like you would drive like an axial wraith or maybe like a Traxxas Slash or something, but it's decently durable for what it is. As far as I've experienced, I've done like jumps with it. I've seen people like even drive it at skate parks. That seems kind of excessive, but yeah, it seems to be decently durable and handles pretty well for being such a scale little buggy. It handles like surprise bumps and stuff in the sidewalk pretty well, and as you would expect for a buggy that costs like 3 times as much as a Tamiya Hornet, it drives way better than a Tamiya Hornet. Like, it's compared to like a DTO2 or maybe like a Traxxas Bandit or something. It doesn't drive as well, obviously, but compared to something like more in its era, like Tamiya Hornet or a Grasshopper, it drives like a Rolls Royce. Like, the suspension works excellent, and it's overall very, very entertaining to drive and very enjoyable to drive. It just looks so cool, it drives so well, and overall is a really cool experience. So that was my quick little overview and mini review of the Tamiya Sand Scorcher. If you guys enjoyed this video or want to see my other Tamiya vehicles or any other RC stuff in general, you can subscribe, comment down below, all that good YouTube shenanigans, and I will see you guys next time.